Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC Fight Night, Kattar V Allen. Before I even start, I just want to establish that I feel very calm. My thoughts are collected. I don't think I've ever felt this mad after a card. These happen where the main event, someone fucks up their leg. It's whatever. It's cool. That's life. I mean, it's not cool, but you understand what I'm saying. It's life. You occasionally get these. But it's always a trend. It seems to be, I'm not superstitious, but it always seems to be that there's just always a trend of something in the night tells you that this isn't going to end well. And for me, what it is usually is, in this case, I didn't watch the fight live. I had something to do, so I watched the replay. I dodged all spoilers, and I watched the replay on ESPN+. And one indicator that tells you the fight ends quickly is the time frame, right? Usually most cards end at 3 hours. Most main event cards end at 3 hours. This one ended at 2:33. So in my head, I'm like, oh, someone got finished. Didn't think it was that kind of finish. But that's not the important part about this card. The important part about this card is that this was maybe the worst judged card of the entire year so far. For the first time in a long time, we have two injustices. For the people who don't understand, we have two robberies. And these aren't, past robberies where they're kind of pity patter and you can kind of argue and da-da-da-da. No, this is two robberies. And it happened when I was watching it. I was stuck for a minute. I was like, first we have to get a few things off my chest before we even get to the scorecards. For a long time I was like, you know what, Michael Bisping isn't really bad on commentary. Now, I'm saying this in the sense that I know Michael Bisping doesn't influence the judges' scorecards. That's not what I'm saying. But it's a hard watch when I have to hear Bisping say, these are close rounds. I don't have a British accent, so I don't care. These are close rounds, when they're in fact not close rounds. We've seen fights like these millions of times. And he'll go, this is a close round, and he'll waffle on for hours and hours and hours. And Dominic had a bad night tonight, just waffling on for hours. And then even in the Kattar fight, he's just it's one thing, Bisping does this thing where he'll congratulate the British fighters after their win or whatever. Doing it, he was blowing Arnold Allen. Spectacular performance in that fight. Dude, it's the first round. It's a feeling out round. What are you talking about? What? It's just... That's one. Two, the crowd tonight was terrible. Terrible. Just obnoxious. It wasn't even loud. We've had loud crowds, and we've had crowds that have favored certain fighters, but just obnoxious crowd. Never thought I would say that before. And in Apex, I might be a fan of just canceling. No one is allowed in the Apex if I were in charge. I'm joking, but one of the most obnoxious Apex crowds I've ever seen in my life. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the judging aspect. And we have there are certain robberies that don't get a lot of attention because of the status of where they are on the card. And a good example would be one that happened on a pay-per-view a while back ago. Boudet versus Brzezinski. All right, I'm probably butchering the last name, but if you understand what I'm talking about, you get where I'm coming from. That fight was a fight where Boudet won 30-27, objectively on most people's scorecards, outstruck Brzezinski, and I believe it's him. It's either other guy, and he got robbed. And very few people cared in the moment, and then we just move on because it's MMA. We have another glowing example of that fight in particular. And here's where we start off. First injustice of the night. Jacoby versus Rountree. Before I even start this card, I'm tired of fighters in the moment. Now listen, fighters can't score the card because they were fighting. They have to wait till after and then do the weird thing where they like pout their faces and clap and go like, oh yeah, you totally won that. No, this is, and that what I'm saying applies to the next injustice, but still, it just popped into my head. Jacoby versus Rountree. I had this 30-27 on all three rounds for Jacoby. 30-27 Jacoby. If you want to be expansive, if you want to be really cute about it, you could maybe go 29-28 Jacoby with the only round you give him. The only round you give Rountree is the first round. We start off with the descriptions of the round. In round 1, Jacoby outstruck Rountree. Clear as day. Okay, he started off getting outstruck. Then all of a sudden Rountree stops all activity. And he gets outstruck to finish the entire round. You go round 2. Okay. Same thing happens, except this time it's by a much wider margin. He gets outstruck to the point where you cannot argue this round for Rountree in any universe. Round 1 maybe, because a lot of the shots that landed on Rountree were body shots, leg kicks, teep kicks. They were kind of filler shots, but essentially Rountree didn't do enough to win that round. We move on. Round 3. Both guys are throwing. You could maybe argue close on strikes, but you can't, because if you look at the raw numbers, which I haven't, but if you watch the fight clearly, Jacoby outstruck Rountree. And the argument, because this happens every so much in MMA, where the argument here is heavy strikes versus non-heavy strikes. Or, excuse me, that's not the argument. Heavy strikes versus activity. Versus you getting outstruck by strikes that aren't as heavy. That argument only should come up when the strikes are close. When the strikes are close is when you want to get into the, oh, he hit the heavy. That argument applies to Jan versus Aljo too. Round 1. And there's a couple other fights, but none that are jumping up to mind. I think one is Dolidze versus Giles. I think that might be one of them. That argument doesn't wash here when you're getting outstruck in all 3 rounds. The same thing with the Boudet versus Brzezinski fight. You lost all 3 rounds objectively. And we go to the judges' scorecards where I haven't, again, with this, I don't look at the judges' scorecards until I'm doing this. Ben Cartledge had it 29-28 for Rountree. He gave the last 2 rounds to Rountree. Guys, I'm really spinning right now, dude. I'm really spinning right. When I think in my head, yo, what are the judges thinking? Maybe they scored round 3 for Rountree and they scored round 1 for Rountree. The only round you could objectively give to Rountree. Now, all 3 go to Jacoby. The only round you can give to Rountree is 1. I'm looking at this man's scorecard. Ben Cartledge gave the last 2 rounds, round 2, where he was outstruck. That round shouldn't even be put in Rountree's vocabulary. Give round 2. He gave round 2 to Rountree. Gave round 3 to Rountree when even that, then he got outstruck. Okay, we continue. Chris Flores gives round 1 and round 3 to Rountree. So let me backtrack. Ben Cartledge gives the first round to Jacoby. Chris Flores gives the second round to Jacoby. Then you go to Ron McCarthy, who I also think kind of scored this incorrectly. He gives this fight to Jacoby, but he gives round 1 and round 2 to Jacoby, and gives round 3 to Rountree. Rountree was outstruck in all 3 rounds. If you're going to do... This is my problem with the way these are scored. If Ron McCarthy's going to give round 3 to Khalil Rountree, you might as well just give him round 1. And the reasoning for that is, yes, there were heavy strikes in round 3, but he was outstruck. But in round 1, he landed heavy shots in that round, but he was outstruck. So why are you just cutting it in half? The apex is the perfect place to get robbed, and nobody cares. We move on, because I want to finish this as soon as possible. We go to the next honorable mention. We go to the next injustice. This one pisses me off a lot more because there may be an argument here for Griffin, but in my view there isn't. I'll tell you why. Next injustice, Means versus Griffin. I scored this fight 29-28 for Griffin. Excuse me. 29-28 for Means. Now, you heard the crowd, because the crowd is fucking retarded. What? Huh? And then you see Means clapping like, no. You see Means like, no, you got this one. And then what even pissed me off even more is a 30-27, dog. Yo, I can't play with this right now. I can't. I'm really mad at the moment. We'll break it down. 29-28. I gave to Means. I gave the last 2 rounds to Means. Here's how it starts off. First round. Griffin outstruck Means and he dropped him. It's a clear drop. He drops him. You go to the second round. Means is outstriking Griffin. Go to the very end of the round. Griffin lands a shot that does not drop Tim Means. That does not drop Tim Means. This isn't. I'm going to reference a fight later on in the honorable mentions where I'll just give it up now. Cody Durden dropped the fighter he was facing. I'll have to look that up real quick. Mota. He dropped. He did this weird hybrid thing where he dropped him, and it looked as though Mota was headed to the ground. But Durden, being so wrestling heavy, decided, let me not wait till he drops. Let me just take him down. So it's kind of like a drop takedown. You kind of like it's essentially a takedown. He didn't let him go straight to the ground. He just took him down. In this one, Means didn't get dropped. Griffin hit him with a strike. He kind of stumbled, and Griffin Means went for a takedown. That was blocked. That was defended by Griffin, and Griffin now has a takedown, which then Griffin does nothing with the takedown. So he got outstruck on the feet, and he got outstruck on bottom by Tim Means. That is objectively Tim Means' round. So I'm excited to see what the scorecards had it, but that is objectively Tim Means' round. You go to round 3, which I'm thinking it right now. If they scored it if anyone scored it differently, I'm going to be heated. This round is Tim Means' round. You start off the round. Tim Means, starts like a little flurry. All right, gets taken down. Complete ground and pound. From the bottom. He is outstriking Griffin constantly. Gets back up, gets taken back down. That's 2 takedowns, okay, for Griffin. And Means is outstriking Griffin. We pause for a second. So off there, it's 2 takedowns for Griffin. Means has all the strikes. The vast majority of the strikes. Means decides, hey, let me get back those 2 takedowns. Gets back up, takes down Griffin twice. Guys, they're even on takedowns, and he outstruck him. This is Tim Means' round. Boom. The only niggle we can see here is if some judge valued the knockdown for the phantom knockdown for Griffin in round 2. And we go to the scorecard. Ben Cartlidge gave the first 2 rounds to Griffin. First round, okay. Second round, I disagree. No, there's no knockdown. Then he gives the 3rd round to Means. So I'm happy he gave the 3rd round to Means, but I think he scored this incorrectly. Boom. We go to Derek Cleary, who... you know what? I'll skip him for a second. Eric Colon scored this correctly. He scored this exact way I scored it. Gave the last 2 rounds to Tim Means. It's clear as day. What's not clear as day, nice transition, is Derek Cleary scoring at 30-27 for Max Griffin. It's almost like he didn't see any strikes on the bottom. First of all, it's disgusting that he didn't score round 3 for Tim Means. Disgusting. And then round 2, same thing. You can maybe get away with it because fucking Cartlidge did the same thing, but disgusting. Tonight's card was ruined because of these two injustices. There's nothing else to say. I'm already heated. I'm already fucking pissed off. It's nuts. It's nuts. We move on. We were gonna move on. I'm honorable mentions. Let me see if I can zoom through these. Honorable mentions. Durden versus Mota. I had this 30-27 for Durden. I put a close marker on the third round. In that first round, Durden had a takedown with some ground and pound. He outstruck Mota. There was that part where it was like this drop takedown where he landed a shot where Mota was headed to the ground, but he didn't let him touch the ground, and he just kind of took him down. Like, that one was objectively, he was headed to the ground, and he took him down. So if he had just let him go, he could have dropped, and that would have counted as a drop, but he took him down. It doesn't matter. He won the round. Go to round two. Durden had a takedown with some ground and pound. Mota was active on the bottom, but not enough to where he could like steal the round. There were just parts of Durden not being active on the ground. He needed to be a little more active to, to where I could be comfortable with scoring it. But I had to watch. You have to watch the whole thing. Mota was active on the bottom, but not enough to Durden's ground and pound, which nullified his. And then you go to round three. This one's close. You can maybe argue it either way. Durden had two takedowns, very little ground and pound, while Mota outstruck Durden on the feet, a couple shots on the feet, and had some shots on the bottom, but it just wasn't enough to nullify what Durden did on the bottom and his two takedowns. So there's that. You go to the scorecards. Tony Weeks has a 29-28. He gave that last round to Mota. Adelaide Burr had a 30-27. Her scorecard reflects mine. And then Ben Carlich has a 29-28. He gave the last round to Mota. You go to the next honorable mention. It's Holmes versus Parker. Holmes versus Park. This fight ended in a submission for Park. I had a 10-9 for Holmes in the first round. In that first round, I think I'm looking at this weird. Yeah, I think I put this. Oh, okay. I'm looking at it. Yeah. So in that first round, Holmes outstruck Park on the feet, and Park then got a takedown. Park had a takedown. He had some ground and pound. He got the takedown around the 2-minute mark. So it was looking like we were in one of those zones where if he had held the takedown and landed some ground and pound, he was probably on his way to shifting that round. Then Holmes kind of reverses it, gets the takedown, reverses it, and then lands some ground and pound enough to really secure the round. You go to the judges' scorecards. Ben Carlich has a 10-9 for Holmes in that first. Rick Winter 10-9, and then Ron McCarthy had a 10-9 for Park. That's a bad score. That's just bad. Throw that away. Honorable mention to Ron McCarthy. Next honorable mention is Fremd. I think it's Fremd. I'm gonna say Friend because everyone said Friend on the broadcast, so it's Fremd versus Gore. That fight ended in a submission win for Gore. I had a 10-9 Gore in the first round. You go to the scorecards. Fremd outstruck Gore on the feet barely. It was in bits. It was barely, but Gore had two takedowns with with a little bit of ground and pound that kind of nullifies him being outstruck on the feet, and therefore that round goes to Gore. Go to the judges' scorecards. All right, Adelaide Bird had it 10-9 for Gore. Derek clearly had a 10-9 for Gore, and then Eric Colon with a weird one just gave that round to Tremin. I guess he got confused about Tremin was doing some work at the very end, so he was just like, fuck it, let's give it to him. No honorable mention there to Eric Colon. Last honorable mention on this card is Cortez versus Acosta. Cortez-Acosta, sorry. Honorable mention, the next honorable mention is Cortez-Acosta versus Vanderaa. I had this 29-28 for Acosta. I give the first and the third round to Acosta. That's pretty clear. The second round I gave to Vanderaa. You go to You go to the first round. It was close on strikes. It was pretty close on strikes. Both of them were kind of trading. They were just trading different level shots. Vanderaa was hitting to the legs. Costa was hitting to the face. It was close on strikes, but Costa obviously outstruck him a little bit, and he's hitting his face. Those strikes for the commentary who continue. I fucking hate the comment. The head strikes mattered more because they were close on strikes. I know they want to keep doing this weird tough guy routine. We know they're fighters, we know they're greats and whatever, but it's annoying how every time we have this discussion, it's, would you rather get hit in the face or the leg? Well, I'd rather get hit in the face than the leg. Okay, well, congratulations. That's not how it's fucking scored. If you get hit in the face with a jab and someone gets hit with a leg kick to a leg, most of the time it would get scored that way, of head strikes mattering more. So Vanderaa got outstruck in that first one, barely. Head strikes mattered more than the leg kicks he was doing, but that changes differently in the second round here, where it's close on strikes in the second round, but Vanderaa gets this one because he landed the more leg kicks, and a lot of Cortez's shots were missing. A lot of them were missing. He landed not enough strikes to really steal that round like he kind of did in the first one. Then you go to the third round. No discussion here. Cortez outstruck Vanderaa. He outstruck him. There's no discussion there. Go to the judges' scorecards. Junior Camacho has it the same way I do. Boom. Tony Weeks has it the same way I do. And then Ron McCarthy just decides he has a 30-27 for Cortez-Acosta. He decides the second round he didn't see anything, and he just gives it to fucking Cortez-Acosta. He just completely ignores that Cortez-Acosta was just throwing wild shots and not landing, and was still outstruck by Vanderaa. So honorable mention there to Ron McCarthy. This card was all this card is just pissed me off. It just pissed me off. I'm done here. I'm not a commentary basher, but oh my fucking. Thank you for listening, and God bless.